What if I told you that a super simple free hack can put tens of thousands of dollars back in your profits and it doesn't cost you a thing? In fact, it takes less than 30 seconds of your time. No subscriptions, no elaborate planning sessions, no investment, just a simple way to increase your ability to recruit and retain frontline hourly workers. Welcome to the SuperPumped Business podcast, where passion, purpose, and profits collide. If you want to launch the kind of growth that changes lives from the bottom all the way to the top of your organization, this is the place. I'm Ben Walters, a serial entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to stop playing small and start building something extraordinary, let's get super pumped. We talked about in the last two episodes how constant turnover needlessly costs employers billions. I'm talking billions with a B, billions of dollars every year, running ads, doing interviews, drug tests, background checks, training, lost productivity, unnecessary payroll taxes, causes you to lose customers, which then hurts your bottom line on the revenue side. And so all this happens when we have high turnover. Now, if you missed the past two episodes, go back and just listen to it because it's really staggering. And I'm surprised how many clients contact me and they're like, I can't figure out, because we do all this modeling and we deliver a good product and a good service, and yet somehow we're just not making money. And you start digging into the layers and you start to realize they're only putting a small portion away for the amount of turnover they have. That turnover is literally just eating up their profitability. And some of them are on the brink right now because they can't get and keep people. And so in those last two episodes, I just talk about the different ways that happens. And I think sometimes talking about it just helps us to wrap our head around really the scope of a very large problem. But today I want to pivot, and I'm excited about this. I want to pivot to solutions. And so over the next three episodes, we're going to talk about three solutions that I've learned the hard way. Now, just to review, or kind of maybe this is the first time you're listening to the podcast, I owned commercial cleaning businesses for years. I owned drive-through, both coffee shop, salad shop, ghost kitchen, that type of thing, where I'm working with a lot of entry-level hourly workers on the front line of food service. And then most recently, through my undercover boss work, I've been in the hospitality industry. So I've seen hotels from the underside, like front desk and restaurant, banquets, housekeeping, all of those things. And so whether it's commercial cleaning or whether it's restaurant business or whether it's the hospitality industry, man, the frontline worker turnover will literally just eat your lunch as a business. And so if I can help you turn that around, I guarantee you are going to be very happy. So today I want to talk about one of the things that I've found over time. And again, this isn't magic. It's a lot of things. You try them, you see what works and what doesn't work and so forth. And so, I've learned these things over time. And I often say, I kind of joke about it, but I say, if you can get someone to clean a high school public restroom, in fact, like 17 of them with 10 stalls each in the women's restroom and 6 urinals and 4 toilets in the men's, and you can keep them not months, but years, you've figured out something. And it's the same thing if the person is donning a headset and saying, hi, may I take your order today? If you can get people to stay in those positions for more than a few weeks or more than a few months and start retaining them for year after year after year, think about what that does to your bottom line. So today I want to talk about this kind of turnover piece and one of the solves. The first piece to solving the turnover puzzle is to hire employees within a 10-minute drive of your workplace. Let me say that again. Hire people within a 10-minute radius of your workplace. Now, depending on how automated your employment screens are, you can set that up in the algorithm so it only gives you people within that 10 minutes, Or if you want to go a little bit old school, you can just basically pull out Google Maps or whatever your platform of choice is for your either the manager who's making the hire or the HR person, and literally just punch in their address and it'll tell you it's 10 minutes, it's 11 minutes, it's 28 minutes. So when applicants apply, screen out everybody who lives further than a 10-minute drive. Now, this is not a rule for higher level positions, management and above. But in general, just conceptually, the lower the pay, the shorter the commute needs to be. And we'll get into that exact reason why. But if someone's making $250,000 a year, they might be okay driving for an hour, right? But they're also driving a luxury car, and maybe it's on self-drive or drive assist where they can do some other things, even though, we should all have our eyes on the road. But there's a certain level of comfort with that. But when we're talking $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $18 an hour, $22 an hour, those lower entry level hourly jobs, the shorter you keep that commute time, the better. It is so critical. And here's why. For the lowest level workers in organizations, transportation, besides their rent, is the number one expense for them. That is the number one thing they face. And if that expense goes up, and every minute you add to their commute adds to that expense, it is more money out of their pocket. So let's just do a quick example. I'm a numbers guy, so let's talk this through. If you're an hourly worker and you're making $15 an hour and you have an hour commute to work, you invest each day to go to work, assuming you work 5/8, you've invested 10 hours to make $120 because you're getting 8 hours of pay for $15, right? So $120. So instead of making $15 an hour, by adding those 2 hours of your commute, you're now making $12 an hour. That's not sounding as good to the frontline worker, right? But then getting there isn't free. You also have to factor in the gas. So let's just say, for argument's sake, $4 a gallon, maybe higher, maybe a little lower where you are. But just with the $4 per gallon, let's say you spend 3 gallons each day to get to and from work. You're now down to 108 hours earned for 10 hours of work. So you are now making an effective wage of $10.80 per hour. So sounds great that you're making 15, right? Maybe that sounds really good. But after a few checks, that frontline worker realizes this just isn't worth it. I am really not making a whole lot. Now, if you want to throw in childcare and car registration and insurance, then it's even lower per hour. So that is the case if someone has an hour commute. Now let's go within the 10-minute drive rule, right? A worker is going to commit 8 1/3 hours, so 10 minutes each way makes 1/3 of an hour, to make $120, which means they are making an effective wage of $14.45 per hour. Now, at half a gallon of gas at $4 a gallon, that's only $2. So the worker is still making $14.25 an hour. Now think about that. Which worker is more likely to stay with the company? The hourly worker that's their effective wage is $10.80 an hour, or the hourly worker who's making $14.25 an hour? Which one do you think it's worth it? Which one do you think is more likely to stay? Versus which one is more likely when somebody offers them $15 an hour, but it's 5 minutes from their house? Who do you think they're going to go with? Do you think they love your company so much that they're going to do that? Now, some of you may say, and I've heard this a lot, they knew it was an hour away when they applied, or they knew it was a half hour away when they applied. So clearly they were fine with that. Let me debunk that for you real quick, because if you're applying for an hourly job, you need money. You've got to make your rent, make your car payment, whatever those bills are. You are in scrap and scramble mode, right? So if the only job you can land right here today is a job an hour away and you can start tomorrow or in 2 or 3 days, you're going to take it. But do you know what you're still doing? You're still looking for other jobs, right? Because this is, maybe it's a job, but it's not a great job, at least for your situation. So you're going to end up going through, if you think about the costs of hiring, you're going to go through running the ad and the interviews and the training and the background check and the drug test and all of that stuff and the lost time of productivity, right? You're going to invest all that in that worker. And then 2 weeks later, when a different employer calls them back and they're right around the corner, they're going to bolt. And you're going to be really mad because you're going to be like, well, they knew it was an hour away. Why'd they quit? It's because it didn't work for them. So cut out all that nonsense of, well, they applied, so they must be okay with an hour commute or a 30-minute commute. Stick to the 10-minute rule. Now, here's another thing that you need to think about, because a lot of managers and owners or owner operators or executives, they don't think about this. Many hourly workers either don't have cars or the car they have is unreliable. So do you know what they do a lot of times? They either walk or they ride public transportation, or maybe they take Uber some of the time. I lived without a car when I was younger in Fort Worth, Texas, and Washington, D.C., all in my 20s, New York City, Boston. Everything is harder when you don't have a car. You got to walk to the subway or the bus stop, and then you stand there and wait for it because you can never time it right. So you're there for anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I can remember the 66 bus in Boston. I would walk to the stop, and then often the bus would roll up and it was so filled, you couldn't even push the massive people onto that bus in order to clear space for yourself. So you'd have to wait for the next one and the next one. And guess what? Pretty soon you were late. Or think about, my daughter rides the Green Line in Boston, and man, that line is down all the time. And so it becomes a nightmare. And so what happens is, the longer your commute, if you think about public transportation, the more transfers and delays and hassles that are going to come into your day. It's opportunities for things to go wrong. And then as an employer, you're thinking, why is Mary always late? And Mary doesn't want to say because the bus is incredibly unreliable, or there was an accident and the bus didn't run the right route today, or whatever that is. So there's a lot built into that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why this 10-minute rule, just in terms of options for that employee. So this summer, I had a situation in our house. We had 2 of our college-age kids home. We had started out with 3 cars among 4 of us working. So it was going to be a little dicey, but we thought we had a plan. But then one of the cars, the clutch went out, and it's a complicated fix on that particular model of car. And so that car was going to be out of commission for basically a month. How can we navigate this thing? And everybody thought they needed to have a vehicle. And so, maybe being a peacemaker that I am, I decided, you know what? I'll just find a way to work. So my work is about 9-minute drive. So it's within that 10-minute driving radius, right? On the bus, it's 35 minutes because I'm in 2 different states. I'm in Ohio and Kentucky. So sometimes getting the bus with 2 different state bus systems or city bus systems is a little tricky. So 35 minutes there, and then an hour to walk. So, those are kind of the matrix for my situation this summer. And so these are all manageable. Now, not ideal, certainly. And a few times I did this, even though it was summer and it was hot, I walked. It was okay, other than I got to work and I was sweaty and a bit smelly, and I think my coworkers didn't appreciate that. And the bus is okay. It's like 35 minutes, but it's a little bit unreliable. Sometimes you can do it in 25 and sometimes it's 45, but again, doable. But it's really a bit of a hassle. But within the 10-minute rule, okay. But my daughter had a commute and it was 30 minutes by car, right? So let's think about her. Is she going to mess around for 90 minutes on public transportation to get where she's going? Because public transportation often takes about 3 times as long. And then walking takes about 6 times as long. So a 90-minute commute, was she going to walk for, what would that be, 6 times, or a 30-minute commute? That would be a 3-hour walk. Is she really going to do that? Is she going to walk 3 hours to work? Of course not. She's not going to do that. So let's think that through. Many hourly workers have unreliable cars that break down frequently, and they end up stuck on either public transportation or maybe walking. There's also the situation where that car is out of commission just for a time. So a lot of times the car breaks down and there's no money to fix it right now. But if you can get to your next paycheck, then you can take it in and afford the repair, right? So this is the point for many people or many frontline workers when they aren't able to get there. Like I talked about, if your work was 30 minutes away, like my daughter's, it becomes just too cumbersome. So they stop showing up. And it's not because they don't like your company or you haven't done the right thing, that sort of thing, but because they don't see a way to get through until they can fix their car. But within the 10-minute radius, there are lots of options. We've talked about public transportation and walking, but there's also Lyft and Uber. And while that eats into their money, you can do it for a short time. There's also, you can rent, at least around me, you can rent motorized scooters, the Birds, that kind of thing. You can do the red bike, might be a different color in your city, but you can take that, which is an e-bike, and zip down where you need to get. And here's the other one. You can bum a ride. Now, in the hospitality industry, people talk a lot about bumming different things. So they want to bum a smoke, or they want to bum a ride, whatever, bum a Coke, whatever. So when you live within 10 minutes of your job, it's easy to bum a ride with a friend or a coworker because 10 minutes isn't that big of an inconvenience. But if you're the person who lives 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 35 minutes, an hour away, your likelihood of bumming a ride from somebody to or from work is very low. Some business owners will say the reason they can't keep workers is because nobody wants to work, or the workers are lazy, or they're just not motivated. But what I've found is quite the opposite. If workers like their work and their employer, they will go to great lengths to keep their job. So if the car breaks down, they might walk an hour to work and then Uber home, or they might take the bus to work and then get a ride home, bum a ride home from a coworker. And if you keep the job within 10 minutes of where they live, they can scrap and scrape and figure it out and get through to the next paycheck, to get through to when they can get the repair on their car, buy the next month's bus pass, whatever that is. But go beyond that, and you are going to be filling that position over and over again. You are going to be costing your company precious time and precious money. Now, I want to throw a couple other things at you today. The first is, if you have a great worker and you've hired them and they live within that 10-minute radius and they're having car issues, right? Consider the impact of a manager or even an owner, and I've done this as an owner, of what they call scooping them to and from work, right? You know what? That's kind of on my way where you live. I know your car is down for the last 2 shifts this week and the first 5 next week till you get paid. Let me swing by and grab you. You know what that says to that worker? It says, your work matters enough that I'm willing to inconvenience myself as your manager or your owner to come get you. What kind of a message does that send to the worker? It also says, I know that you are fighting paycheck to paycheck, and I don't want you to lose any money on this next check because you can't get to work. So I'm going to help you make that happen. What kind of message does that send to an employee? It sends an employee that you matter, that the work you do matters. 2 of the things we want most, I don't care whether we're a frontline entry-level worker or whether we're the CEO of some mega corporation, we want to know that our work matters and that us showing up matters. We don't just want to be another cog in the wheel. We want to matter. If you will scoop that worker or even just arrange for it. Hey, is anyone going north out of here when we finish tonight? Oh yeah, I am. I'm headed up to whatever. Hey, could you drive John up there and drop him off? Sure, no problem. All of a sudden, John's still part of that team. And when the next employer comes offering, you're paying him 15 and they're paying him 16, right? They're going to think twice about leaving because they're going to say, that employer cares about me. They drove me to work even when my car was down for a week or 2 weeks. They helped me get to work. What a cool thing. I can recall back when we had our coffee shop, we had a woman, an older woman, in fact, a retiree, who was our barista, and she did a fantastic job. But we had a really heavy snowfall in Dayton, Ohio, and there was no way she was going to shovel out of that mess. It was just it's that heavy kind of snow that all of a sudden they're out there trying to move thousands of pounds of snow in a quick order to get to work. So we knew that Jackie wasn't going to make it to work unless we helped her out. And so my brother and I swung by. We got up really early that day. It was like 3 in the morning or something because we had to shovel ourselves out. But we shoveled ourselves out. Then we drove to Jackie's house and we shoveled Jackie out. And then Jackie was able to drive to work. Do you know what an impact that made on Jackie? And you know what Jackie said every time a customer came through? Customers would say, "We're surprised you're at work, Jackie," because they knew she was a retiree and widowed and she lived alone. And then guess what she would say? "Oh, Ben and his brother Tony came and shoveled me out." You know what kind of goodwill that not only built with Jackie, but also with the customers? Customers would say, "I wish my boss cared enough to shovel me out. I was out there for 2.5 hours this week and I was 15 minutes late and then my boss wrote me up." Really? Which boss do you think you want to work for? Who is going to make a bigger impact? Such a simple action sends the message that you matter and I need you at work. And the work you do is important. What a message to send to your employees. 2 other things I want you to think about with your frontline workers. One is that in a lot of households, those workers are sharing a car, right? So if it's a shared car situation, a lot of times they tag team too if they have kids. I've seen this so many times where maybe one of the partners is on first shift and the other one is on second shift, right? And they either trade off the car when one gets home and the other one comes back, or vice versa, or one keeps the car but just runs the other one to and from work. The longer that commute is, the less likely that whole setup is going to work for that family. They may take that job initially, it's not going to fit longer term with them. The second thing to remember is so many of our frontline hourly workers are scrapping to get by, and so many of them work multiple jobs. Some of those are formal jobs, but a lot of them are more informal sector, I would call it, where they're working for you the normal 8 hours on the W-2 job, but they're also babysitting for their sister in the evening, or they're, doing some auto repair in their garage late at night, or they're whatever that thing is, cleaning houses on the side for cash under the table. If your commute starts eating into that time where all of a sudden the job plus the commute is 9 or 9.5 or 10 hours, they can't do that. And so while they may do your job for a time, they say it's not worth it. And so they move on. That's what drives a lot of our turnover. You've got to put yourself in the mindset of that frontline worker. They are scrapping, and every minute counts. Every dollar they're spending on gas, that counts. That could be the difference between making the rent or being evicted. That could be the difference between making the car payment or having that car repossessed. That could be the difference between being able to afford gas that week or not afford gas that week. Those extra miles and extra minutes make a difference. And the more you begin to understand the whole mindset and the struggles and the challenges that these workers have, the better boss you're going to become. I guarantee you, once you start changing your mindset, you are going to drive your turnover down so low that no matter what you're doing, they're going to want to work for you. You don't think Jackie wants to work for the boss who comes with his own brother and shovels her out in the morning? You think when Starbucks comes knocking and says, "We'll give you a little bit more," that she's going to say, "Oh, sure, yeah. See you, Ben. Here's my resignation." No, because you've impacted her life. I am telling you, this turnover thing is a gold mine you can unlock. There is so much profitability if you can figure this piece out, and I would love to help you. If you want help curbing the turnover in your business and reclaiming all that money that you've been wasting, just flowing out the door, just hit me up for a 30-minute consultation. I would love to dig into your specifics to help you turn around your turnover issues. Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, I have 2 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And second, jump on over to superpumped.com to find out all the incredible ways we can help you launch your Super Pumped business. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.